I find out when I get a check for almost
Oh
$700,000.
my God.
It's how do you just miss?
Wow.
This was probably about half of the estate. Hi, this is Jeff Marsachi, the plain English attorney, and we've got a real treat today. We have Maggie Alcock of Rowing Ducks. Before we dig into today's topic, please help us get out solid, accurate information on estate planning and Medicaid planning by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Unfortunately, the algorithms just tend to favor videos that tell people what they want to hear instead of what is actually true. If you want us to get the truth out there about estate and Medicaid planning information, then please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Again, we're here with Maggie Alcock. She came up with this company, Rowing Ducks. So, Maggie, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Okay. I have lived in North Carolina for about 35 years. And for a good part of that, I had different businesses working mainly with seniors, doing errands, taking the doctor, organizing. And I used to do whole house organizing a lot. And as I got older, I realized I don't actually want to do all that physical work. I wanted to do something more niche and narrow it down a little bit. And I was in the process of doing my own will and gathering all the papers together. And I found it so incredibly tedious that I wanted to go, do my laundry or, wash the car or do anything else. And so I got my sister to come over and we sat and gathered things and went through things. And it was kind of like a trip down memory lane, like, oh, remember when I had this car? And remember when I went to school here? And so we got it all done. And then I thought, I'm pretty organized and I didn't want to do this myself. There's got to be other people who would need this help too. And so I wanted a name for the business. And it's a serious business because you're talking about serious legal things and end of life things. But I wanted a little bit of humor in it. And so that phrase, get your ducks in a row. And so plus all the other names for sort of estate organizing were already taken. So I just think it's a fun name for a serious business.
Okay, great. Well, I guess tell us a little bit about the specific services that you're offering your clients and working with them. What are those? And, let's just kind of get to what are the top three things you'd have to say that provide value to your clients and their families that really give them a good value.
Well, I think the top thing is that I know what to look for. I go to people's houses and I see bags of papers, drawers full, filing boxes, and people are just overwhelmed in this process sometimes because they don't know what's important and what's not. And a lot of what people save, they don't have to save. I have this whole sheet. I love checklists. I have lots of checklists about how long you have to save things. And there are a lot of things you do not need to save. People have bank statements from years ago or stock statements or, all kinds of stuff that they don't need. So I can make the process pretty easy because I know what to look for, what's important, what attorneys want, what important documents if you die are. So I sort of cut through a lot of
Yeah.
the stuff.
Well, yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought of it that way, but that makes sense. It's not just here's what is needed. There are other things that may not be needed for certain professionals, but also may for others. And I have seen, unfortunately, firsthand a disorganization. This was kind of after the fact and many years ago. There was a couple, one of them was older than the other, and we put together their revocable trust, and they were going to get around to moving their accounts into the trust, and they never really did. The older person was also a little more sick, and it's like, yeah, I'm probably going to go first, and they joke about it, and it's, no big deal. And they ended up dying in a car accident. Their
Oh
trustee
no.
and executor was up in Ohio, and they were really a specialty surgeon. So they couldn't just go, oh, okay, let's just drop everything and go.
Oh, wow.
And so he asked me and my staff to go and secure the most important stuff. And it wasn't until we were let into the house by someone who had a key that we realized, oh my gosh, these are hoarders.
Oh, no.
And yeah, it was messy, but some things were sort of organized.
Right.
One of them was a minister. They had every single sermon they ever did typed up going back to the 70s. They had
Oh,
every bank
wow.
statement going back to the 70s.
Wow.
And all the sermons were organized on a shelf.
Uh-huh.
The bank statements were organized, but they were in these separate boxes that weren't together. And it's like, there's so much stuff. If you had been paid by the hour to get this
Right.
household up to speed for their estate, you could have retired after that one client.
I call it a treasure hunt sometimes because I had a client recently referred to me, and the sister-in-law is out of state and called and said, this is a couple. She was in a car accident a couple years ago. Is in a wheelchair. He has dementia. You know, it's progressing. He's okay, but he's the main caretaker of her. They need a little help. Can you go see? So I went over there and I walked in the door and it was like, okay. I just sat down and started making phone calls because they needed so much help quickly. And so I spent the first week sorting through papers, looking for papers. They were like, oh, look under the bed. We have a file box that locked. I had to take it to the locksmith because we couldn't get it open. So I got everything together. We're moving right along. We're, finding a place for them to live. She falls and breaks her hip and goes into the hospital. And a nephew from Charlotte comes, picks up the husband. After her surgery, she goes to Charlotte. But the good thing was I had in a file box ready to go all the paperwork they needed, the car titles. They had a will. It was old. His veterans papers. So it was all there. You could just pick it up and go. But it was, if it had happened a week before that, it would have been quite a mess.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. You talk about a treasure hunt. I think I apologize. I probably told you this story offline. I had a client. It was his dad who passed on. No will, no nothing. And him and his brother were the beneficiaries, but the brother lived out of town. He said, yeah, I can be the executor and handle the estate and administrate it and make sure everything's fine. But I need your help. And then for almost a year, he didn't do anything. And finally he's like, I can't do it. Here, go ahead. And so between me and a person on my staff, we're running through and trying to collect all of the accounts. And quote, just to be safe and complete, my assistant called the deceased dad's ex-girlfriend from like 3 years prior when he lived out in California and got, he's like, I got the bad diagnosis. They broke up because I'm going to North Carolina to live with my son. All right. She's like, yeah, well, there were 2 bank accounts. I know he always got statements for 2 bank accounts, but one of them I was joint on and I already collected that. So I got that. But I know there was this other account. I have no idea how much was in there.
Wow.
Well, we went through all this stuff and it became even more of a mess because the way California's rules are, we had to actually hire counsel in state to do an ancillary part of the probate. And we had no idea how much money was there. I find out when I get a check for almost $700,000.
Oh my God. Wow.
How do you just miss
Wow.
$700,000? And it's not like this was
Wow.
a multi-million-dollar estate. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. I got 700,000 over this. No, this was probably about half of the estate. And we had no idea and wouldn't have had any idea if my assistant hadn't been a little more persistent. Now,
So
The
what?
other part of that is it cost about
Oh
$35,000 to
my
get
goodness.
that money because of the way California probate is. Yeah, you just get 5%. So this one account got that attorney
Wow.
about
Wow.
$35,000.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
when I talk to people, I do talks at senior centers and, any kind of club, and I always ask people who here has a will or a trust. And there's usually a couple of people, and I say, "Do you know where it is?" And people laugh because sometimes they go, well, and then I ask them, "Well, how old is it?" And oh, and I say, if you have to think it's too old and you need to have it updated. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't realize that I say, things change and laws change. I know the power of attorney laws have changed. It's like if your will is too old, that is not valid. Um, and it's things like that that people don't realize. And the most common thing I get is like, oh yeah, I should do that. And I should do that. And I say,
Yeah.
we always think that the sick die before the well and the old die before the young. And we all know
Mhm.
that's just not true. You could,
Yeah.
have an accident and be in the hospital and be incapacitated, and your family is really at a disadvantage, and it gets really complicated when you have to figure things out after the fact.
Yeah, I occasionally get, "Well, I've got plenty of time to put that stuff together." And I say, "Well,
Mhm.
tell you what, tell me what day you're gonna die, and we'll make sure to get you on the calendar before then." And they look at me and they're in shock, and then they're like, "Yeah, you're right. Okay, maybe I should do something and do it now."
Well, the other thing I say to the group sometimes is, okay, who here likes to talk about death or dying? Raise your hand. No hands go up. I said, okay, who here is eventually going to die? Everybody raises their hand and everyone laughs because
Yep.
we don't think about, well, a lot of people think, well, if I'm going to make my will, it means I'm close to the end, or it's good. And it's like, the best time to get organized is when you don't need to, because there's no stress, there's no pressure.
Mhm.
You can make decisions that, um, you can talk to your attorney about. So it's a complicated process, but not really. I tell people what I do
Yeah.
is not rocket science. You could do this yourself, but it's easier if you have someone there with you guiding you through the process. And I also say to people, your estate is larger than your will or your trust. You have your digital estate, you have how your house runs, you have how your bills get paid. There's a lot of things that people don't realize. I go through with couples and I ask them each to write down, what do you do in the house and what do you do in the house, and not to cause a fight, but like who pays
Mhm.
what bills and things like that. And one time the husband's listing things, and the wife says, we have a storage unit. It's like she didn't know, and he's like, yeah, I'm not sure where the key is. So
Yeah, and, that's an important thing too, just finding particular assets, well, and that kinda brings me to a question. Let me put it this way, what are some of the most unique things you found that people just kind of forgot about? Like, for my client's father, that $700,000 was just, "Wait a minute." They
mhm.
had no idea.
A common thing is, and I didn't realize this until recently, that if you have a life insurance policy or any kind of insurance policy and you have a beneficiary designated and you don't tell them, when you die, the insurance company is under no obligation to find you and say, here, have some money.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but a lot of money goes unclaimed every year because people don't tell people. So the craziest thing is, well, one of the things is that storage unit. I just thought that was like, okay.
Mhm.
There are people have jewelry collections that uh, there are some really good things in the jewelry box that they don't remember or they forgot about. It's like, grandma's ring and my mom's ring and my diamond ring that I don't wear anymore, earrings. So there's little things like that that sort of pop up, and unless you're thinking about what to do at the end, you won't necessarily look for those things or list them.
Yeah, I end up with clients when we're putting together the revocable living trust. One of the biggest things that we make sure we do is we have a separate meeting just about funding the trust, making sure that the assets are titled the right way, that a beneficiary is designated the right way. So the whole thing works as a
Right.
coordinated plan. And I get clients that forget, oh, that's right. I still have $200 or $300 in that credit union account. I only put the money in there because I needed to get a car loan or something like that. It's been years, and I just kind of forgot that it was there.
Mhm.
One time, and this is about 10 years ago, maybe a little more. I had some very long-term clients. The husband passed on about 5 or 6 years after I did their plan. And then mom lived another 10 plus years. And so we're settling the estate and the trust, and they had most of their stuff in the trust. But the daughters are cleaning out the house to get it ready for sale. And they find this insurance policy
Mm.
from 1954.
Oh,
And
wow.
she looked at it, and it's like, if you think it's important for educational videos like this to get out there, then please help us out by subscribing to the channel. Yeah, this was like 7 months before the oldest was born. I think she got the life insurance policy when she found out she was pregnant with me. And it's
Wow.
like, we've never seen any bills, we've never seen any of this stuff,
Wow.
and it was a whopping $500. And I was like, "Well, chances are it's not a valid policy anymore. She just kept the paperwork, but look, let's send it in." A couple of weeks later, we get a check for $500 from New York Life.
There you go.
So, they just had no idea it was out there.
Another thing that I ask people, do you have a valid ID? Because if they have to get
Mhm.
things notarized, a lot of seniors sort of let that, "Oh, I don't drive anymore," or "I don't really need it." And since COVID, it's almost impossible to get an appointment at DMV to get your license renewed. But a notary told me to ask people that because she's like, it happens a lot. She gets someplace and they don't have a valid ID, and she's like, I can't do this. So
Yeah.
that's something that people forget about. I also tell people, someone once said, "Oh yeah, I have my will. It's in my safety deposit box." I'm like, "Oh no, get it out right now." I
Well,
tell
yeah,
people
I
that
get
the
that.
last person to tell that you died is your bank because it
Well
gets a little complicated sometimes.
well, yeah, this is something that I get as a question in the process. Usually it's a little more towards the end after they've signed their documents and now they've got this big blue binder. And so, where should we keep the trust binder? Should we put it in a safe deposit box? No.
No.
And it's for really two big reasons. The first is you also have your healthcare power of attorney documents in there.
Mhm.
God forbid you get into a car accident at 6 o'clock on a Friday and that bank doesn't open till 9 a.m. on Monday. All those documents are now locked up. All right. And the second thing is after you pass on, they're going to freeze that safe deposit box.
Right.
And so now it's like weeks before they can actually get their hands on original documents. It's like, no, 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 you don't want to keep that in there. Uh, Most of the time, my clients, after I talk with them, they're only using their safe deposit boxes for things like coin collections or really expensive jewelry that they don't want to just
Right.
kind of leave in the house. It's really for securing things and keeping them safe, but not their important documents. You want those
Yeah.
easily accessible.
Well, I had a client last year whose mom had passed, and she had a pretty extensive coin collection that she kept in the safe deposit box. And the daughter had gone to the bank with her mom on a fairly regular basis, and the mom went into the safety deposit box. So the people in the bank knew her, they knew her mom. The mom passes, the daughter goes to open the safety deposit box, and they're like, "Oh, nope, sorry, you're not listed on here. You can't get in." And it's the secret handshake, I call it sometimes. It's like you don't know
Mhm.
what question to ask. And it was she had let it go to the state. She had ignored the issue for a long time and finally came to me and said, "Can you help me get this money?" And it was quite a process. And I ended up going downtown to the clerk of courts and basically crying and saying, "Help me." Every time I get on the phone with someone, they tell me to do something different to get these assets out of the safe deposit box, because after a certain amount of time, the bank gives it to the state. So yeah, it was quite a process.
Yeah, and even more horror stories. I I unfortunately had been put in the position, and I'm still in the position of being the executor of a client's will. It was supposed to be, oh, it's just a temporary thing. I've got
Oh,
pay
okay.
on death beneficiaries on all of these accounts. I keep everything extremely simple. It shouldn't be an issue. And I told her my main concern is I don't want to end up in a position where there isn't enough money in the actual probate estate to take care of your bills and move stuff. And so we actually talked with our financial advisor and took the pay on death beneficiaries off of one account because she just did not want or need a revocable trust. All right. She passes on. This is 10 years later. She was supposed to come back to me and put other people in line that she knew and trusted, but
Right.
didn't happen. And we end up finding out just recently, because it took us a long time to even get the authority, that that one account still had approximately what she said it would 10 years ago, but she had a line of credit with her financial advisor and basically took out more than $50,000. And now suddenly that's not enough to take care of her funeral bill, pay back the
Wow.
line of credit, handle all this other stuff. And now here we have this estate that's the probate estate is less than what has to go out for debts.
Wow.
And so I'm having to pull in a much more experienced state administration attorney to help me
Wow.
get this thing sorted out. If you had just done a trust and kept it organized and kept on top of it and said, okay, well, wait a minute, I'm actually borrowing money out here. Let's do something with the designation. No, none of that re-examining happened in the more than 10 years before she passed on. So that kind of leads me to the question to you. How often should people who get organized come back and readdress it?
Well, the system I use is a file box, and you can use it monthly. You can use it to put bills in, you can use it to put car titles in, you can use it for a lot of things. But I tell people, and I'm sure you tell people too, it's like you should you should check your will and your trust. Look at it every year. Has anything
Mhm.
changed? Have you changed your mind? Has someone passed away? And I said, if you have it done locally with an attorney, it won't be the whole process of redoing it. You just go to them and talk to them, and they can update it for you. I don't know if you have a certain year span that you tell people, but I tell people, if it's older than 5 years, you need to go talk to someone.
Yeah, we tell people, particularly the trust clients, you should be looking at this every year. Well, why every year? They're not necessarily going to have changes in the people they want doing certain things. They're not necessarily going to have changes in how the estate's distributed, but people will get ticked off at one bank and go to another. And if what we did was say, all right, well, these bank accounts should be titled in the name of the trust, they go somewhere. Here's a story, and for the viewers out there, forgive me, I tell this story all the time, and I tell it to my clients too on why it's important. One of the bigger banks, not going to say which one, and this is about 12 years ago when people were still using ATMs to take out cash a lot.
Mhm.
They said, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to institute a $5 per month ATM fee on all checking accounts that have a debit card that can access an ATM. And we won't do any of this per transaction fees. And let me tell you, all of these people who had checking accounts that hardly ever used an ATM, they went absolutely bananas. They kept pulling out all their money, closing all their accounts, and for that whole year and more, when I'm sitting down with those clients in their annual review meeting, okay, and you still have these accounts at this bank, and they go, oh no, did you hear what they did? Well, yeah, I heard what they did. Well, we marched right down to this other bank and we put our money there. Okay, well, did you open those accounts in the name of the trust or in your individual names? And it's like, oh, they didn't. We were so upset with the other bank, we just opened it in our own names. We catch that if they come in every year. How often do people actually make changes to, like, the trustee, power of attorney, executor list, or the healthcare agent list? It's about every 5 to 7 years that there's some kind of change with that or the beneficiaries, just on average. But it is worth looking at every year, because if they don't and they just come in 7 years later, a third to a half on average of their accounts have been moved to other institutions, and they didn't
Wow.
have it lined up with the trust. The trust is supposed to avoid probate and all the costs and delays and all the other stuff. But I tell them it's like a suitcase. If you took stuff out of the suitcase and you didn't put the new stuff in, when you go on your final trip, it's just not going to be there. And now all this other stuff has to be handled in probate or somewhere, some other way.
Well, sometimes people get, they're embarrassed. They say, I'm too disorganized. I don't know how to do this. And I'm like, why should you know how to do this? There's no reason that you should know how to set up a will or a trust. You need an attorney for that. But
Yeah.
there's no reason you should know what you need or what you don't need. There's no training for this. And we find it so hard to talk about death and dying in this country that we avoid that topic and we think we'll get to it later. And I tell people all the time too, it's like, fine, you don't need any of that. The state has lots of laws that will take care of it for you after you pass. You might not like
Yeah.
them, but it will all get done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
I try and encourage people. It's like it's not really as complicated as we like to think. It's kind of like the boogeyman out there, like, oh, my trust, my will. And it's like, you know what? It's really pretty straightforward. It's get stuff together, talk, you ask questions, you fill out a lot of forms, you make decisions. It's not like having a
yeah.
medical procedure done. It's okay.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I really try to make sure for my law practice, that I know it's difficult for people to come in. It's not a topic they want to talk about. So we make the process as easy as
Yeah.
possible. Yeah, we've got an online course. It's like, here's a very simple, straightforward book that talks about the big things. And so when they come in and sit down with us, we can talk about their goals. We've got a pre-appointment questionnaire where really we're just looking for ballpark figures and stuff to make sure we don't have an estate tax situation or an inherited income tax or a liquidity situation. And if they get that stuff into us, great. The rest of the process, we do a little bit at different stages to make sure everything works well. We
Right.
try to keep that easy and not look for a lot of details up front. So that's a process that we have. And so when do people actually come to me? When do they have that little push? Something horrible has either happened to them, their immediate family, or someone they know, and they say, oh, they left a mess. So, what would you say is kind of the ideal time to talk to you for your services?
Right now, when you don't need
Yeah,
to. um,
yeah,
People put this off and put this off, and everyone says, oh, I should do that. But most of my clients come in crisis. Something has happened,
yeah,
something has made them. Once in a while, I'll get someone who's really organized and wants to do something. But um, because it's such a unknown thing for most people that we don't talk about it, and we think it's such a big deal, but uh, and it's like you said, little pieces. Say you don't have to do this in one sitting. You can gather things. Gathering is one part of the whole process because people put things in crazy places. I've had people pull suitcases out from under beds, and you open, it's like, whoa, what do we have here? Um, so just gather your things together. That's one step. Sort your papers. That's another step. You don't have to do it all in one one fell swoops, as they say. So
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, uh, any kind of closing thoughts or ideas you want to put out there, so before we wrap things up for about you and what you do?
well, um, I make the process as painless as possible. I find it a lot of people enjoy doing it, gathering their paperwork and getting organized with someone else there, because and not a family member, because I haven't heard your stories and I like to hear your stories, and I can keep you on track. I know it's important. I can keep you moving. I can get it done, and I can reassure you that it's you can get this accomplished. It's not that complicated, and I'm nice to be with, and people, it's like meeting a friend at a coffee shop. It can be just a really nice experience. I've met a lot of really interesting people and heard a lot of crazy, crazy stories.
Okay. All right. Well, again, that was Maggie Alcock of Rowing Ducks. You can get in touch with her at rowingducks.com. And what are some other ways people can get a hold of you if they need your help?
They can call me, 919
Okay. All right. Well, again, this is Jeff Mersace, the plain English attorney. As I always end up telling my clients, please stay safe, plan ahead, and enjoy life. And whatever you do, make it a great day.
Thanks.